Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 23rd, 2021 regular meeting of the Gaston County Board of Commissioners. My name is Tom Kieger. I serve as chairman of the board as well as a commissioner from Gastonia Township. I'd like to welcome all our viewers and thank Spectrum Cable and AT&T for making this possible for our citizens. For our audience, I'd like to present your Gaston County Commissioners, beginning on my far right.
Alan Fraley, Cherville Township.
Good evening, Chad Brown, Riverbend Township.
Bob Hovis, Crowder's Mountain Township.
Kim Johnson, Gastonia Township.
I'm Ronnie Worley, South Point Township.
At this time, if we would all rise for the invocation by Commissioner Bob Hovis, followed by the pledge led by Commissioner Chad Brown.
If you will, please bow with me. As we go into prayer, let us have a moment of silence to commemorate those individuals in Oklahoma who just lost their lives in absolute senseless tragedy. Father, we come to you tonight to take care of the business of the county. Father, we come to you with open hearts and willing minds. Father, give us the wisdom, the strength, and the intelligence to understand that our work is for the good of Gaston County and that we have the opportunity to move Gaston County forward in a positive manner, that we are your leaders, that we exemplify all the character traits that you would have us to do. We ask that in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Could you join me in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Commission will take citizen comment for 5 public hearings. Comment will be taken on the following issues: zoning map change Z21-04, zoning map change Z21-05, zoning map change Z21-07, zoning map change Z21-08, and to authorize a Level 1 Economic Development Grant for Project Frosty. Before we begin, let me outline the rules of the procedure for the hearings. Citizens wishing to make comment will be recognized by the chair, then requested to step to the microphone to give their comments. Citizens will state their name and address for the record, limited to 3 minutes, and all questions will be directed to the chair for response. The chair shall rule on all points of order during the hearing. Do I have a motion to go into public hearings?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hovis, second by Mr. Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Item A, the Commission will take comment on public hearing, zoning map change Z21-04, Manuel Eli applicant. Ms. Sarah Penley, our Building and Development Services Senior Planner, will provide a brief overview. Ms. Penley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request is to rezone parcels 302-793, 302-792, and 302-791, located at 337, 341, and 347 Acre Road in Bessemer City, from the R1 Single Family Limited Zoning District to the R2 Single Family Moderate Zoning District. The applicant and owner is Manuel Ellis. The total acreage of the property is 2.59 acres. The current use is undeveloped. It has been indicated by the applicant that he wishes to be able to place a double-wide manufactured home on the property for his personal use. As a point of clarification, the property has recently been subdivided into 3 separate parcels to allow for his 2 children to be able to build at a later date. And if we can refer to the maps at this time, please. As mentioned, the property is located in the 300 block of Acre Road, which is just south and east of the town of Cherville, northwest of Bessemer City, and just east of the Cleveland County, Gaston County line. This is an aerial view of the subject property. Again, the entire site is highlighted in a dark blue. The vicinity, immediate vicinity is residential in nature with some undeveloped tracts as well. Zoning map indicates the R1 Single Family Limited Zoning District with some R2 Single Family Moderate to the north and east of the property. And zooming out just a bit, the zoning is consistent with the Single Family Limited with some Single Family General to the north and east, as well as Single Family Moderate to the north and east of the subject site as well. This last slide indicates the property owners who were notified for the purpose of public hearing and a listing of those property owners. Staff's review of the application finds it to be consistent with the comprehensive land use plan as presented. The planning board met on March 8th, and after a brief discussion, they voted unanimously 8-0 in favor of recommending approval. Notices were mailed out and the property was posted in accordance with county policy. Staff did receive a few calls for general information and clarification. Mr. Chairman, that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Penley. Any comments from the applicant? Would you like to make any comments, sir?
Yes.
If you would, please just state your name and address.
My name is Manuel Ellis, 42 Warwick Circle Apartment, 106 Lake Wiley, South Carolina. When I purchased the land and I subdivided it was to build, now wood has went up so expensive. But the property value, I think, for the county was like $18,000, it's over $41,000 now. So, you know, I've helped the county out there and I want to put a manufactured home there because, like I said, wood is so expensive right now. And I have two children and I have some grandchildren as well. So I don't plan on setting it on blocks and I plan on putting a footing underneath it, you know. I've looked around in the area and that's what I see mostly is the homes that I'm looking at putting there. I don't see many modular homes there. They're all trailers. I've been contacted by some of the residents want me to sell the land to them and I won't do it, you know. So that's what I want to do with it, if possible.
All right,
I
thank you,
appreciate
sir.
it. Thank you.
Is there any citizen that would wish to make comment at this time? Questions from the Board of Commissioners? Mr. Hovis.
I have one question of Ms. Penley, if you would, please, Ms. Penley. Obviously, recognizing these parcel numbers are all consecutive, you said it was recently subdivided. The parent lot, I guess, was a different number, of course.
Yes,
But
sir.
since this parent lot has now been subdivided in accordance with our requirements, you can take a parent lot and break it into 3 pieces without doing a subdivision ordinance. I understand that. But
To clarify, 5 lots or less is considered a minor subdivision and can be transacted by deed.
Okay.
And so this would fall into that category where a single piece of property was subdivided into 3 separate parcels. And that transaction, although to clarify, they did record a survey or record a plat with this particular piece of property. But that's not necessary in that instance. But anything that's 5 lots or less can be recorded by deed and does not necessarily require subdivision submittal or review by our department.
But if it's 5's the magic number, that's fine. I just knew that there was a limitation. But any further subdivision of this property wouldn't allow, because of the size, it wouldn't allow anything other than a single home. I mean, it can't be further subdivided on acreage restriction, correct?
Yes, sir, that's
That's the
correct.
point that I was
Yes,
trying
sir,
to
I'm
ask.
sorry, I misunderstood your question. Yes, sir. That's the maximum with the total acreage that he had.
Correct.
And the minimum lot size requirements for that zoning district, as well as the R2 zoning district. Those lot requirements are the same at 30,000 square feet. So these properties could not be further subdivided due to our subdivision regulations. They wouldn't be allowed.
And it's single residence, so it's 3 residents. So-
Yes, sir.
Correct.
That one home per property would be allowed on those 3 separate pieces. Yes,
Thank you.
sir.
That was my question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
If there's no further question, I will accept the motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Fraley made the motion, Mr. Brown made the second. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right. I need a motion and a second to approve or
Motion to
disapprove.
approve.
Mr. Fraley made the motion, Mr. Brown made the second. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Sink, is there any comments you would like to add from the planning board?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The planning board was a unanimous recommendation to approve this project, and if I could, I'd like to read the consistency statement into the record, which is that the proposed rezoning is in the rural future land use plan. Rural areas allow for residential homes located on large lots with opportunities for agribusiness ventures. The use going from an R1 to R2 will allow the subject parcel to continue as residential in nature, which is consistent with the rural designation, but is also in harmony with other residential uses within the immediate vicinity. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item B, the commission will take comment on a public hearing zoning map change Z 21-05, James Kirk applicant. Ms. Penley, the floor is yours once again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request is to rezone parcel 170590, located at 2047 Pewett's Chapel Road in Bessemer City, from the R2 Single Family Moderate Zoning District to the R3 Single Family General Zoning District. The applicant and property owner is James William Kirk. The total acreage of the property is 4.63 acres. The current use is residential with a single-wide manufactured home currently on site. If approved, this would bring the non-conforming use of that single-wide manufactured home into compliance. The applicant is also seeking to place an additional single-wide manufactured home on the property that was inherited from his mother's estate. And if you'll give us just 1 second to I'm sorry. That's okay. I believe we're having technical difficulties. I think you guys can see the presentation. If we can move forward, referring to the maps. This property is located again on the 2000 block of Pewett's Chapel Road, just north and east of the city of Bessemer City, northwest of Gastonia, in the northwestern section of the county. Our next slide is an aerial view of the property. The subject site, again, is highlighted in dark blue. It's wooded and vacant for the most part. However, there is a single-wide manufactured home located in the northeast corner of that property on the corner. The surrounding uses are residential and manufactured housing. The zoning map is reflective of the R2 Single Family Moderate zoning district with some R1 Single Family Limited. And zooming out, there's R2 Single Family Moderate, the R1, with some R3 Single Family General to the north and west of the property. The last slide is indicative of the property owners who were notified for the purpose of public hearing, and a listing of those property owners. Staff's review of the application finds it to be consistent with the comprehensive land use plan as presented. The planning board met on March 8th, and after a lengthy discussion, they voted unanimously 8-0 in favor of recommending disapproval. There was some confusion at first regarding the existing home versus the home that had been inherited. I believe they assumed that the applicant, the original intent was to replace the existing home with the one that had been inherited. And staff had to clarify that could have been done without the rezoning of the property. Once we clarified that, the planning board, I think, was most concerned with the potential for adding additional single-wide manufactured homes on the property, and recommended that the applicant return with a subdivided portion. Staff did explain again, that it was our recommendation that they rezone the property in its entirety in order to bring the existing home into compliance and to allow for them to add the home that they had inherited. This particular applicant does not intend to further subdivide the property in order to allow any additional homes other than the one that was inherited. Mr. Chairman thought that was important to note. Notices were mailed and the property was posted in accordance with policy, and we did not receive any calls regarding this application. Thank you. That concludes our report.
Okay, as you usually state on most of these issues, this was consistent with the land use plan?
Staff found it to be consistent with the land use plan. However, the planning board voted to disapprove it, and the planning board found it to be inconsistent.
Okay, so the staff thinks one way and the planning board another way?
That would be correct, Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
in this particular application.
okay, thank you. Is there any comments from the applicant if they're here?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is ill and unable to attend the meeting tonight. If I can assist with any questions on their behalf, I'd be happy to.
Is there any citizen comment? Questions from the board? Mr. Fraley?
Mr. Chairman, I also talked to the applicant. They called me and told me there was a health issue, that they were not going to be able to attend tonight. And I would think if there's any way that this is not going to be approved, since it's consistent with our guidelines, that they ought to have an opportunity to come here and speak. I'm going to make a motion to approve it and move forward in that direction. But if we need be, I'd rather table it than to vote with the disapproval tonight. You know, I know we don't know how the vote's going to go, obviously, but with there being a health issue and them not being able to attend, I don't know that that would be fair on their part. If we can table it, can we?
Yes, sir.
Of course, I'll make the motion
I'll second it.
to approve. If it fits in our guidelines, I'm willing to move forward with it.
Okay, hold on one second. Before we have a motion to approve, let's hear from Mr. Sink on the comments from the planning board first.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So the planning board's recommendation is a unanimous vote to disapprove the project, and I will read that into the record and yield to y'all. That the proposed rezoning is in the rural future land use plan, that rural areas allow for residential homes located on large lots with opportunities for agribusiness ventures, and that the use going from R2 to R3 would allow the subject parcel to continue as a residential use in nature, which allows for other housing types that are inconsistent with the primary residential uses in the surrounding area. So that would be if this board went along with the planning board's recommendation to disapprove the project, and it's very important, the wording of the motion. I understand we have one on the table from Vice Chairman Fraley, so I'll yield at this time unless there's other questions.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to withdraw that motion and move to table it. That way, knowing the recommendation from the planning board, that gives these folks an opportunity to come back and present their case.
Mr. Hovis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It appears from what I've heard from Ms. Penley and from what was said in the original purpose that there's conflicting information about putting multiple mobile homes on a single platted lot, which is what the staff had recommended, that they come back and replat it, just like the issue we just looked at previously. This gentleman came, he took his property, he subdivided it into 3 lots, which meets the criteria of the zoning ordinance, and now he can develop 3, or he can just do 1. He can do the one he wants. It doesn't matter. But this is like creating a mini mobile home park by having multiples on a single lot. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Penley.
Yes, sir. To be correct, if this application were approved, he would not be allowed to add the additional home until he subdivided the
correct.
piece off. So if it were approved, again, no additional homes would be added to that property. It would only, in essence, bring the existing home into compliance. And then he would be able to move forward with the subdivision to allow for the other one. And the reason sometimes staff does that and doesn't recommend the survey in advance is in the instance that an application is denied, then an applicant has not spent an unnecessary amount of money to subdivide a piece of property that they may or may not be able to develop.
True, but at the same time, we are looking at the
Absolutely.
current conditions of the plat. And I certainly don't want to take a plat, 4.67 acres, and do that and then come up with, by plat. I want to know what it is before I take action on it. If the applicant isn't vested enough in their direction forward to do that, I don't know why we, the county, wouldn't. I'm not saying, but at the same time, I certainly concur with Mr. Fraley, Vice Chairman Fraley, that the applicant obviously deserves an opportunity to be here. So I suggest that I agree with the comment about tabling it, because we can always bring this back up at our next meeting. And that way there's no harm, no foul, and we can get into that discussion. But, I mean, without it being in its proper state, I'm not going to approve a zoning change for a single plat that they can't do what they initially intended to do. That's my comments.
Mr. Brown?
Well, I just kind of got lost in it anyway. But so one of the things we're doing, let's just say we tabled it and where it failed, this house would not be able to come into what the standard should be, up to our
Compliance.
standards. We need that in order to, so if we went ahead and we approved this tonight, we're not changing anything but bringing the one house, because nothing can be added, and we can go ahead and make that house come up to standards anyway. So it's, I just think that this right here it's really, we're going backwards if we table it. If we prove it, then all of a sudden we can have it go ahead and go forward and have them make the improvements. If they want to change to what the plat looks like later, they can come back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, that's what I heard Ms. Penley tell us, that by approving it, we would put the one there now into compliance.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. If they made any modifications or improvements, that home would be in compliance
Okay.
and would no longer be considered a non-conforming use. And again, to clarify, they would not be able to add any additional homes to that property as it is presented right now.
Okay, I need a motion to go out of public hearing. Okay,
I'll
Mr. Brown
second.
makes a motion, Mr. Fraley makes a second. All those in favor of going out of session? It's unanimous. Now, we will accept a motion for approval.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Brown makes the motion. I'll second. Mr. Worley makes the second. Any more discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, the one opposed, Ms. Clerk. Item C, the commission will take comment on public hearing zoning map change Z 21-07, Wilson Family Rentals applicant. Ms. Penley, once again.
1 second, Mr. Chairman, if we may, if we could ask the attorney regarding the consistency statement for the motion to approval, if that could be read into record.
I thought he did that before.
He read the one from the planning board, so he'll need to read the consistency statement that goes with the motion
Oh,
for
okay.
approval.
This is different since
Thank
the
you.
final vote of this board is to actually approve the application. The vote was to approve, so therefore the consistency statement that I'll read into the record is, the proposed rezoning is in the rural future land use plan. Rural areas allow for residential homes located on large lots with opportunities for agribusiness ventures. The use going from R2 to R3 will allow the subject parcel to continue as residential in use and in nature, which is consistent with the rural designation and is in harmony with other residential uses within the immediate vicinity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sink.
All right, item C.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application Z21-07. This request is to rezone parcel 169183, a portion of, located at Dallas High Shoals Highway in Dallas, from the R1 Single Family Limited Zoning District with the U.S. Urban Standards Overlay to the C3 General Commercial Zoning District with U.S. Urban Standards Overlay. The applicant and property owner is Wilson Family Rentals, LLC. The total acreage of the property is 12.82 acres, but the total acreage to be considered with this rezoning application is 10.76 acres. The current use is vacant and undeveloped. It is important to highlight, as I'll demonstrate with the following slides, that this property is currently considered as a split zoning with two different zoning districts on one parcel. The applicant is asking the board tonight to have a portion of that property rezoned in order to have one consistent zoning district for the entirety of his parcel. And if we can refer to the slides, please. The property again is located on the Dallas High Shoals Highway, or 321 Business, just north of the town of Dallas, south of the town of High Shoals, and just west of the 321 highway. This is an aerial view of the property. The area to be considered for the rezoning is highlighted in dark blue. You'll see a lighter shade of blue that extends to the road frontage, and that completes the entirety of the parcel. As mentioned, the property is vacant with some commercial uses to the north and across the road, and some residential uses to the west of the property. Zoning map again indicates the R1 Single Family Limited with the U.S. Urban Standards Overlay. Again, that front portion of this parcel is zoned C3 or General Commercial, as well as the adjoining parcels to the north and to the southeast. There's some R3 Single Family General across the street as well. And zooming out, the zoning remains consistent with the R1 Single Family Limited, General Commercial. There's some Single Family General across the street with a touch of industrial, general industrial, to the south and to the east of the property, just before the town of Dallas. Our last slide is a map of the property owners who were notified for the purpose of public hearing, and a listing of those owners. Staff's review of the application finds it to be consistent with the comprehensive land use plan as presented. The planning board met on March 8th, and after a brief discussion, they voted unanimously 8-0 in favor of recommending approval. Notices were mailed and property posted in accordance with policy. We did receive several calls for general information and clarification. Mr. Chairman, this concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Right. Any comments from the applicant? Sir, if you would state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Tim Moore, attorney at law, 305 East King Street, Kings Mountain, North Carolina. And I'm here with Mark Wilson. Mark, you can give your address as well.
It's Mark Wilson, 531 Coleman Lane, Kings Mountain.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing from us. I think staff did an amazingly detailed explanation that pretty well explains that you have a piece of property that right now is divided in the same lot into two different zoning areas, which I know generally is something counties want to get rid of anyway. And so this does that. This the use that will be made of this property is for some for some storage warehouses there. There's some of those already next door. It's a consistent land use. I believe this is consistent with your with the land use plan for the county as well. And the back property that backs up to the one residential area you see, there's a thick grove of woods right there, at least about 300 feet deep between it and between that next residential area. And so Mr. Wilson's looking forward to developing this property and would answer any questions if commissioners have any. We appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions from citizens? Questions from the board? If there are no additional comments, I'll accept the motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Hovis makes the motion, Mr. Brown makes the second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. And at this time, before we proceed to the vote, I'll once again ask our county attorney to provide comments regarding the planning board's recommendation.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. As Ms. Penley stated, this was an 8-0 unanimous vote to recommend approving the application of Wilson Family Rentals. This consistency statement is as follows. The proposed rezoning is in the Rural Center Future Land Use Plan. Rural center areas can serve a commercial purpose and can be anchored by a rural market, allowing for residential homes and businesses to be closer together and built closer to the roadway. The use, going from R1 to C3, will make the subject parcel commercial in nature, which is consistent with the rural center designation and is in harmony with other commercial districts within the immediate vicinity.
Thank you, Mr. Sink.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve? Mr.
Second.
Worley makes the motion.
Second.
Mr. Hovis made the second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. Now that the hearing's over, I would like to introduce Mr. Moore. Folks, this is the Speaker of the North Carolina House of Representatives in the General Assembly, and the gentleman in the back row walking out with the blue mask on is Representative Kelly Hastings, who serves part of Gaston County in the General Assembly. Welcome.
Wear my lawyer hat tonight. It's always great to be with you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
I don't want to say anything to influence. The commission will take comment on public hearing zoning map change Z21-08. Garen Lee Beam applicant. Ms. Penley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request is to rezone parcel 304255, a portion of located at 456 Robert Road in Cherville, from the I-2 General Industrial Zoning District to the R1 Single Family Limited Zoning District. The applicant and property owner is Garen Lee Beam. The total acreage of the property is 11.71 acres, and the total acreage to be considered with this rezoning application is 6.37 acres. The current use is vacant and undeveloped. It is important to highlight, as I'll demonstrate in the following slides, and much like the previous application, that this property is currently considered as a split zoning with two different zoning districts composed on one parcel. The applicant is asking to have a portion of the property rezoned in order to have one consistent zoning district for the entirety of his property. And if we can refer to the slides, please. As mentioned, the property is in the 400 block of Robert Road in Cherville, western portion of the county, north and west of the town of Cherville, and just south of the Lincoln County line. This is an aerial view of the property, which is mentioned is vacant and undeveloped. The darker blue highlighted area is the area to be considered for rezoning, while the lighter shade of blue indicates the remainder of this parcel. Zoning map is indicative of the general industrial, I-2 general industrial zoning district with some R1 single-family limited. It's also surrounded by the ETJ for the town of Cherville. And zooming out, it's consistent with the exclusive I-3 industrial zoning, the I-2 general, and the R1 single-family limited. This last map is indicative of the property owners who were notified for the purpose of public hearing and a listing of those property owners. Staff's review of the application finds it to be consistent with the comprehensive land use plan as presented. The planning board met on March 8th, and after a brief discussion, they voted unanimously 8-0 in favor of recommending approval. Notices were mailed and the property was posted in accordance with policy. Staff did not receive any calls for information regarding this application. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Any comments from the applicant if they might be here?
I don't believe they were going to be able to attend, Mr. Chairman.
Any citizen wishing to make comment at this time? Questions of the board? Motion to close the public hearing by Mr. Fraley, second by Mr. Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Before we proceed, once again, I'll ask Mr. Sink for comments from the planning board.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This was an 8-0 unanimous recommendation to approve the BEAM application. The consistency statement is as follows, that the proposed rezoning is in the rural future land use plan. The rural areas allow for residential homes located on large lots with opportunities for agribusiness ventures, and the use going from I-2 to R1 will make the use residential in nature, which is consistent with the rural designation and is in harmony with other residential districts within the immediate vicinity.
Motion by Mr. Fraley, second by Mr. Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item E, the commission will take comment on, to approve a Level 1 Economic Development Grant for Project Frosty. Mr. Donnie Hicks, our EDC Director, will provide a brief overview. Mr. Hicks, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to come tonight. I appreciate Ms. Buff working with us to get this on the agenda as quickly as we could. We have a company that's interested in buying the Maestro building at the Gaston Technology Park, and as you know, if I'm here now, we're competitive for it. So we're down to a couple of sites, and we think we're the last site in North Carolina and at least a site in South Carolina. The company would invest about $9 million in machinery equipment in buying the building. They'll pay an average salary of about $56,000 a year, which is well above our average county average of $42,000. We anticipate that they're going to try to move this summer to acquire the building, upfit it, and be operational sometime late this year, early next year. The City of Gastonia will consider the same item on their agenda April the 6th. The only thing that we're really asking for is just a confirmation of our existing policy. They're not asking for anything outside what they would receive if they came and just simply filled out the grant application. But it is a European company, and it's made it hard for them to get back and forth to meet with us, and all they're looking for is the reassurance that we're going to do what we've told them we're going to do. And what I would anticipate doing is getting the board resolution from you, sending it back to them as confirmation that we will follow through with what we've promised to them. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hicks. Is there any citizen wishing to make comment? Questions from the board? Mr. Worley?
Just brief. Donnie, I know you mentioned the salary. Any
Yep.
number of
Sorry,
jobs?
22.
22.
22 to start
Thank
with, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. I'll accept the motion to
So
close the
moved.
public hearing. Mr. Hovis makes the motion, Commissioner Brown makes the second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Worley makes the motion, Commissioner Johnson seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. That
Thank you.
concludes tonight's public hearing. Mr. Hicks, have a great evening. We'll move to item 2, the approval of the business agenda. Are there any revisions to the business agenda or any items needing to be pulled from the consent agenda?
Motion to approve is written, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion by Mr. Hovis to approve, a second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Next is citizen recognition. Our next item on the agenda is citizen recognition. This comment period is not intended to require the commission or staff to answer questions or provide responses. Questions requiring a response shall be answered as soon as possible through the county manager's office. Folks will be limited to 3 minutes. As I call your name, please go to the podium, state your name and address. The first and only citizen signed up tonight is Miss Sierra Hall. Good evening, Miss Hall.
Great evening and happy Tuesday to you guys. My name is Sierra Hall. I'm a Gaston County citizen. I was just here today because this is the first day that I've been able to see you guys in person. I've sent out a lot of emails to every person sitting up here, and some people I got a response back from. Some people that chose not to respond for whatever reason. The group that I now work with is the Gaston County Citizens for Change, and we are just extending the invitations to just kind of get to know you guys a little bit better, to help you guys understand a little bit more about us and the things that we want to see done within the county. There's a lot of stuff going on. The summertime is coming up. There's a lot of different needs of the county, and I hear a lot of you guys mentioning different things for your own agendas, and I would just encourage each one of you to reach out to the people of the community that do want to help to do those things. In future meetings, they will be brought up again, but I also wanted to talk about the removal of the Confederate monument. I sat here tonight and I listened to all of you guys be able to propose different things that y'all wanted done very quickly, and I second the motion this, I second the motion that. We have talked about this removal for the longest time, and I feel like you guys are continuing to push it off and push it off and push it off. And the citizens have already spoke about this this issue, and I would just like to know, at what point are you guys going to respond to the emails where we asked to get it added to the agenda? I've asked since October. It is now March, and it is still not put on the agenda. Why are we pushing time like this? Like, it's almost as if you guys could care less about what we're talking about, and you continue to say that you guys want us to, you know, work peacefully or whatever. I'm cool with all of that, but at the same time, respond back to us, communicate back with us. Don't just act like we're just nobody. Jonathan, you're the county attorney. At one point, are you going to make these guys, you know, add this to the agenda? Many people have asked. We have sent emails, we have sent it in writing, and everything else. So, we will continue to email, we will continue to call. Tonight, it's only me, and the crowd has died down. This is what you guys wanted, but at the same time, the crowd can come back. It's going to come back, but we want to do it peacefully. We want the monument gone. Y'all saw how last summer went. You guys think that y'all want the same thing this summer? Y'all paid out a lot of money on security and all of this other kind of stuff. People are in the house because it's cold. When it gets warm, people are going to come back out, and it's probably going to be worse than last summer. So I would just encourage you guys to continue to communicate with us, to all of you guys that have reached out already. Thank you for your time and your efforts, and to those that we have not been able to meet with, respond back to the emails. We would appreciate that. It's a nice thing to do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and good evening. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Mr. Brown makes the motion. Mr. Worley makes the second. Any discussion? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. Moves us to the non-consent agenda. Item A, the only item sponsored by Commissioner Johnson and the county attorney. Well, I guess you can't sponsor it, though, but you influenced it. To amend the Gaston County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 8, Health and Sanitation, Article 4, Public Assembly and Parade Notification, to create article outlining county notification process for public assemblies held on county property. Is there a motion? Mr. Brown makes the motion. Ms. Johnson makes the motion. Mr. Brown makes the second. Now, any discussion? All those in favor?
I was going to make a statement.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I agree with the changes of the resolution, and it was always about public safety, still about public safety. I plan to support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fraley. Again, all those in, Mr. Worley.
I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. You know, in looking at the revised ordinance as it is, I spoke with some members of the media today. They asked me about First Amendment. Certainly this board's intention is not to inhibit or restrict First Amendment, the First Amendment rights that our citizens have. We want to encourage those citizens, just as Ms. Hall got up and spoke tonight. So we want to encourage it. I was also asked about the time, and I said to the reporter earlier today, I said our public parks have times that they are open and times that they are closed, and I said this is a similar issue, that there'll be times that it's allowed and times that it's not allowed where it states. Folks can still congregate and protest freely other places anytime, so it doesn't inhibit freedom of speech in any way, and I plan to support it as well. I think it's a good ordinance, and it, as Alan said, it's about public safety, about safety of our members of our law enforcement especially, that notice. Thank you.
Thank you. I would add that this came up last month at our voting meeting, and it needed a unanimous vote, and we had one or two missing, so we weren't able to do that. Tonight, it'll pass by a simple majority. Again, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Brings us to appointments. We've got nothing pulled, so Mr. Fraley, have at it.
I have one, Mr. Chairman. Environmental Review Advisory Board, Johnny Denton.
And second by Mr. Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Commissioner Philbeck's as well. I'll do after, if that's okay. The Quality of Natural Resources Committee, application received by Mr. James Burke.
Okay, motion by Mr. Brown, second by Mr. Hovis. All those in favor?
And now
I also had Mr. Burke for appointment.
oh, well, you can do it if you like.
That's okay. Do you have any?
Never mind, that was full board anyway.
That was-
I read the wrong one, sorry. Might as well
Is
get
there
it.
another one?
Yes, this here is for Commissioner Philbeck's Economic Development Commission, Mr. Jack Brown, and the Travel and Tourism Advisory Board, Mark Stevens.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Mr. Hovis.
Chair, I have no appointments.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
I have no appointments tonight.
Commissioner Worley.
None tonight, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Since he's already appointed, made the motion, I guess we've already appointed Mr. Burke by the full board. Is that correct, Mr. Sink?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, commissioner reports, starting with Mr. Fraley.
None, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brown.
In lieu of Kings Mountain getting beat tonight, I'll yield my time.
All right, Ms. Brown. Oh, Mrs. Brown. Commissioner Johnson.
No reports tonight.
Mr. Worley. Okay, I've got just a couple real briefly. The manager and I met with the school superintendent and the school chairman and vice chairman to discuss the upcoming budget. There's the request for extra funding this year that is normal, and I don't know, will we be discussing any of this at the planning retreat, or will we do this in another venue?
We'll be having conversations about that prior to the planning retreat. We'll begin distributing the written budget updates as well in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then we will have a dedicated session to talk about capital and school funding.
Okay, thank you. And also, the College Board, we met yesterday, and the board voted to approve its budget requests for Gaston County and the state, and Lincoln County, actually. And I believe the manager will be having a meeting coming up. She had a brief meeting today with the college president, and they'll be following up very shortly on that. The one or two of the requests that they deem extremely important is some kind of increase for the employees who haven't had one in 3 years. The added expenses since the Vet Tech building is up and running, utilities, the same thing basically every department has throughout the county. And on another note, recently the college completed their financial audit for the state of North Carolina, and they were pleased to find that they had no audit exceptions, no audit findings. Everything was great, and they say due to the COVID-19 pandemic, all the teleworking, it made it pretty difficult to get everything done without any infractions. And the IT department was recognized by the state also for their tremendous work with what is called Clear Touch technology. Anybody have anything else that they'd like to add on any kind of report? At this time, we'll go to the county manager for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just a very brief report concerning the American Rescue Funds from the federal government. And I say brief because the guidance is very limited right now in terms of how those funds can be utilized. But I do have some information to share at this point. Gaston County, from that tranche of money, will be receiving approximately $43.5 million. There'll be an additional pot of funds that will be capital funds that we have to make application for. So we're watching for information on that as well. But related to the $43.5 million, we do expect some detailed guidance to come to us in the month of May. So we're being very cautious relative to how we bring that information to you all in context of our budget deliberations, because that's relatively late in the budget process, but we're being very mindful to keep a watch on that. We do know that payment of those funds will be made in 2 equal installments. The first will come in May of '21, so this May, and then the second half of the $43 million will come to us 1 year later in May of '22. We also know that those funds must be spent on costs that are incurred on or before December 31st, 2024. As we learn more, we will provide a written report for you all, but we don't know enough yet. And I preface all of this by saying all of the guidance is also subject to change. One last general statement that we do have in writing relates to the fact that the money should be geared toward assistance to COVID relief related to households, small businesses, nonprofits, assistance to hard-hit industries like tourism, travel, hospitality, and infrastructure investment. But there is not much more detail than that. So because of the clawback nature of this and the importance of utilizing these funds strategically, we are trying to access every piece of information that we can to help provide guidance for the board. So I'll have more hopefully sooner than later. That concludes my report unless there are questions.
Mr. Sink?
No such report tonight, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other matters to come before the board? That said, this concludes our meeting for tonight. Our next work session will be Tuesday, April 13th, right here in the Harley B. Gaston Jr. Public Forum Courthouse. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please contact our clerk, Donna Buff. We are out.